The White Sox reaching 50 wins in September right now is a cause for celebration, but it won't be if it happens this late next season. Let's discuss why on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan, a contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. Additionally, follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the White Sox reached 50 wins after a 6-5 victory yesterday over the Twins. Let's discuss how right now it's actually a cause for celebration, but next season, the team better be at 50 wins a whole lot sooner. Then it appears that Mike Clevinger might still be called up, which could have one more significant negative impact in the big picture that I want to discuss. And finally, I'll answer your Mailbag questions. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. All right, so the vibes around the White Sox are actually good, even though they are still on a collision course for their third straight 100-loss season. And, hey, there's still a potential that, they still got to win 7 more games to avoid being the second worst team ever in White Sox history, a franchise that's been around for 125 years. But you've got a young core that you can move forward with. That's the good thing about this season, that you've now got pieces that you can say, hey, we can actually get back to being competitive soon. Where, again, 2024, you had Garrett Crochet that you knew was going to be traded. Maybe some rotation pieces in Sean Burke and Jonathan Cannon, maybe. But otherwise, you had nothing. And Luis Robert Jr., you were hoping he would rebuild his trade value. That was it. And now you got, a neat post-game presser with Colson Montgomery joking about how the shorter Chase Meidroth hit a home run yesterday. You got Colson just bashing home runs left and right, doing things at Jose Abreu levels. And most importantly, the White Sox have actually reached the 50-win mark. And congrats to those who took the over on the 49.5 wins some sports books had at the beginning of last offseason. Now, I know some of you still need the 3 more victories to cash out on some of those tickets that were at 52.5, but congrats to you. One of my biggest regrets is I really should have gotten on that action too. But reaching the 50-win mark with this young core is also showing that, hey, again, there is the potential to emerge from this dark abyss. Whereas, for example, the Chicago Sun-Times, Seth Greenberg, and he's got an excellent piece. I suggest you guys read it. But he does, and then they've got the House of L cover for the Sun-Times where it paints it more of a bleak picture. And it's true. I mean, it's still not good to lose 100 games for 3 straight seasons in a row, but at least the chance to get out of this dark abyss is possible. Where in 2023, you entered it. 2024, you kept digging to hitting bottoms that you never thought were fathomable. And now it looks like you might be able to dig back up. But if I'm talking about the Sox winning 50 games on this date next year, or say on August 23rd next year, that's going to be a totally different story. That's going to be a massive, massive disappointment. Because usually if you're reaching 50 wins in late August, early September, you are definitely on the road to losing 100 games. In a 4th straight 100-loss season would be completely unacceptable. That would be going backwards, or, well, basically staying in the dark abyss. And why do I mention August 23rd, for example? That is in 2023 was when the White Sox reached 50 wins during that miserable season. You think about it, even if you're 81-81 mediocre, usually you're reaching 50 wins sometime in July, like the 2022 team did. And, for example, I think the next mark should be for measuring progress. Obviously, the super positives, be the super positive fan that you are. I don't see it, them jumping, from like, say, 55 to 60 wins to 80 to 85 wins. But I think, as you build up, 65 to 70 wins, even 75 wins would be, something that I would expect for next season, that typically usually hit that mark in early August, like August 6th, when the 2019 team reached 50 victories. And remember that 2019 season, while still not great in terms of the, I think they finished with 71 wins, you started to have that rebuild show you the young core that could, bring better days. That only lasted 2 seasons and fell apart through self-inflicted wounds and injuries. But still, I think that's what the 2026 season should be. It should be kind of the equivalent to the 2019 season. But again, you just got to hope things go completely differently. And the biggest thing is you just want to, I actually would hope that they continue to climb in the standings. I think that should be an expectation for next season, because I'm already going to say mission accomplished for this season. You got data in terms of players that you can move forward with on a young core. I overall like the culture that Will Venable has set. I still got, I think if you give him a better bullpen, then we can really, really analyze, is he a good bullpen managing, leader? It's trending towards, but at the same time, he's rolling out like Cam Boozer and Tyler Alexander most days. Guys that just are not good in high leverage situations. And obviously, I'm kind of staying I'm just being in the more realistic. I mean, a lot more work still has to be done to get this team back to saying, hey, they can compete for the AL Central. But if you see as the Twins, like we saw yesterday, the Twins are kind of going backwards. Time to pounce. At least, hey, that can't hurt to try to aim for 4th place. I know it's not ideal, but look at how bad things got and where we've been, where, time to start climbing out of that cellar. And more work obviously clearly has to be done. You have to upgrade the bullpen. You got to get some short-term bridge guys that then you can flip at the trade deadline next year to cap and get more to take advantage of and get more assets in that crazy trade deadline market. And I think you got to add 2, maybe 3 more starting pitchers, because Schomburg's not doing great in Charlotte. But still, you at least got to add 2 more starting pitchers. Maybe 1 if you can work something out with Martin Perez. And you have more questions that need answers. Chase Meidroth, for example. Is he an actual everyday second baseman, or is he Craig Graybeck? The little dog. Very good super utility player, but, a guy that, because he's not going to slug for much. He finally hit a home run. It's been a while, but I don't see him hitting 15, 20 homers. And again, he's supposed to be an on-base guy, and his on-base percentage is below the ideal 350 that a guy of his ability should be at. Lenyn Sosa still got to prove that he can hit for more power to be a regular DH, because that's where he needs to be. While playing some first, maybe some second on days, you are DHing Kyle Teal or Edgar Carroll, and maybe you got to entertain Teal playing left field. Just saying. But Miguel Vargas still has to prove he can be more than a raised floor player. Those are the hurdles that have to be cleared, but it would be nice to have your win total at 50 at, say, like earlier in August next year. Because if they're still at this 50 win total at this point next year, it still means that not only are they at the bottom of the Central again, but they're at the way bottom of the league. Because right now, only the Rockies with 39 wins and the Nationals with 54 are the White Sox peers in losing. You'd like to start moving up to not be at the absolute bottom of the league. Be with those other teams that are at least, because every other team is above 60 wins. And again, you saw that the White Sox future has some sunny days where maybe the Twins, it's more darker. But this also means you got to have faith in GM Chris Getz that he can actually fix a bullpen, something he's proven he's incapable of doing the past 2 off seasons. It also means, can they make good upgrades? Man, Colson Montgomery can hit home runs like he's doing, like 30 to 35 home runs. That's going to go a long way towards this team having success. I'm sorry about that. Well, in terms of having success, the White Sox actually successfully called up the right guys, but there's still a possibility that Mike Clevinger is getting called up, and that could have ramifications on some of the prospects that I want to discuss after the break. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. And I love how Prize Picks is just such a simple concept that can potentially double my money. You know, you think Chicago is going to keep Justin Jefferson out of the end zone? It's going to be very hard, but if you do, just pick less on the 0.5 rush plus receptions TD projections. You also think J.J. McCarthy is going to play like a scared rookie. Let's hope Chicago can do that. Not holding my breath, but maybe they do. You can pick less on the 221.5 passing yard projections. And we've all seen Justin Fields have low passing yard totals. He's now in New York, so maybe you go with less on the 174.5 passing yard projections. And the best part, even if one of your picks misses, Prize Picks invented the flex play, so you can still double your money. Download the Prize Pick app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel's traditional money lines, spreads, and over-unders, they're fun to play. But if you want to win some serious cash, or at least double or triple your money, play FanDuel's props, parlays, and futures. They got a weekly special right now. Last I checked, it was at plus 1,600 on any quarterback throwing over 450 yards in week one. So you put, say, $10 on that, and any of the 32 NFL QBs that are starting, put up that monster passing number, you could win potentially $160. And they got a 4-leg same-game parlay for Chicago and Minnesota next Monday featuring DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, and Justin Jefferson, all scoring an anytime touchdown. Last time I checked, it's at plus 3607. So $10 on that, and it hitting pays out $360.17. FanDuel makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. We have an important request here at Locked On. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is where your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. All right, so why am I talking about Mike Clevinger again? Because yesterday I did go on a topic when it was apparent, according to Jim Margulis of Sox Machine, and he's got his sources. SoxMachine.com is, not really just a blog. I mean, they do report. They got James Fegan embedded as a beat reporter. He's got his sources. Josh Nelson's got his sources. And Margulis heard, because, I think he was at the AAA Nashville game. Were they playing Charlotte? I think they were. Either way, he would have heard, from somebody that Clevinger was pulled and on his way to Chicago. So, that was kind of I did the topic about why that would be terrible. And turns out Frazier Ellard and Brian Ramos are the ones that got promoted. They're 27 and 28. Now, I still didn't edit it out because I did talk about Bryce Wilson replacing Aaron Savali, and why are we doing that? Why are we wasting our time on Bryce Wilson again? But why am I revisiting Clevinger when, hey, I got messages, and I did record a short on the YouTube channel going over that. I had one, get your sources right. I wasn't the one that broke the news, okay? It was broken by a well-regarded source, all right? And a lot of other people responded that cover the White Sox. It wasn't just me. But why am I, talking about it? Well, first, never put it past the White Sox to still make the wrong move. Like DFAing Clevinger and then still keeping him in the organization. Second, James Fox of FutureSox.net, who has broken prospect news before too, is tweeting, and I have it up. that Jim Margulis of SoxMachine.com just got the dates wrong. It's in his replies, but that Clevinger's, still going to be potentially making a return to the White Sox 26-man roster. Well, now 28. This is what he tweets out at JamesFox917. It sounds like Mike Clevinger could still join the hashtag White Sox this week, alienating close to the majors prospects and leaving a sour taste in their mouths to accommodate a loser veteran. Quick editorialization, Clevinger bros. That's his words, not mine. Don't jump into my comments about that because you're very sensitive people. Anyways, back to his tweet. It's certainly a strange choice for Chris Getz at this juncture. And why I'm tackling this is Fox has made a great point that this potential call-up goes beyond just wasting time on a 34-year-old pitcher who can't throw strikes anymore. It's got the potential to alienate a lot of these prospects on the cusp of making the show. You got guys that are working their butts off and trying to help, with the goal of one day helping this team get back to being competitive, getting out of the abyss that Mike Clevinger helped the White Sox get in. Because the White Sox have known nothing but 100-loss seasons since Mike Clevinger's been here. Okay? That's just facts. And the Clevinger bros, you may not care about Tanner McDougal or Shane Murphy, or even say recently acquired pitching prospects like Duncan Davitt or Ben Peoples being stuck in the minors because, gosh darn it, wokeness and false accusations have ruined Mike Clevinger, even though Clevinger agreed to counseling after being investigated by the major leagues. They still must have found something for him to say, okay, I'll do counseling even though they didn't suspend him. Just because charges were never filed doesn't mean domestic violence allegations are not true, okay? But I don't want to get into that. But I'm going to see somebody jump in and be like, oh, you're talking about it for the second time. Why are you doing this? No. Why I'm talking about this is again, the sign that you could potentially give to guys that actually could help you and saying, I'm not interested right now. And because this is the second time, maybe even the third time actually that I think about it, that the White Sox have done this. Where if it's their guy, and it seems like Mike Clevinger knows somebody in the organization that loves him, they'll be like, yeah, we're going to do everything for you. But if they're not really high on the guy, and yet he's earning his way up, they're like, well, maybe he's got to do this, this, and this, like Tim Elko. Because let's forget, let's not forget, actually, I'm sorry. Let's not forget that Mike Clevinger's whip was well over 2, and the fact that he's always oft injured. He doesn't need another opportunity to showcase himself to a league that has rejected him 3 times on the open market. And that's got to be somebody in this organization has got to be pushing this. Like, hey, let's give him one more opportunity to at least see if he could showcase himself to the rest of the league. Because I would rather bullpen the days that we're supposed to go to Aaron Savali before he was waived and the Cubs were like, hey, we're going to put you in the bullpen. Like, I'd rather have Tanner McDougal get called up and pitch 3 innings at Chicago rather than 3 innings at Double-A, because I don't care if the Barons win a playoff game. I don't. I want to see the White Sox start winning playoff games in 2027, and I think Tanner McDougal can help them win playoff games in 2027. But they keep doing this where it's like you work hard, you rake, you produce, but Tim Elko, no. Now, sometimes the White Sox being hesitant might be right. Like Tim Elko not making much contact when he got to the show. And it's probably why he got a short leash. It was like, okay, you want him, here you go. But still, stop giving this message to guys that put in the work that, well, you might not have a shot to get to the majors. You already had Trey McGowan, and I'm not saying Trey McGowan would be a difference maker, but you already had him retire. He was probably tired of toiling. And that's why I was happy to see Ramos get called up because, yes, he's been struggling at AAA. And the White Sox did not give him an Arizona reset, but 788 OPS in August gets the call, And that's why when they brought up Ellard and Ramos, I was like, oh, my God, I'm so glad that James Fegan might have been wrong, even though it's a tough one for him. And I'm sorry that I misattributed, Fegan as the one that broke the news when it was Margulis. But like I said, I was just like, oh, thank God that they're not bringing him up. But at the same time, if you're going to bring up Clevinger at some point to cover some bullpen innings, just bring up Sean Burke or Jonathan Cannon. I don't care if they're struggling at Charlotte. Well, it's Tuesday. I've got some mailbag questions and comments to address on your weekly Talk You Off Tuesday segment after the break. Hey, Locked On White Sox fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code SEASON and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought, wait, this is way too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. So don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code SEASON for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code SEASON. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcast, as this show's available on all major podcast platforms. And for those watching on YouTube, yes, I did shave the beard. Part of it is I like to enter fall a little bit clean shaven, then regrow like the fall beard. The other thing is I did paint my daughter's room after I recorded yesterday's episode. And, I did it. My daughter actually helped. She was very cute as an 8-year-old. And then my wife, but yeah, paint flies everywhere when you're using rollers, and a lot of it got into the beard. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to shave it instead of trying to, get the shampoo in there and that. And shout out to Dan in the YouTube comments. He saw the work that I did. He's a painter in Fresno. So if you're in Fresno, look up Dan. Free advertising, but hey, you're an everydayer. I appreciate you for saying, hey, I did a good job, because you saw the background. So I don't think I'm going to be a full-time painter anytime soon, but hey, appreciate you, Dan. And in terms of appreciating you, the everydayers, one of the reasons why I want to do Talk You Off Tuesday, as I like to call it, or the Tuesday Mailbag. Shout out to my guy Drew for coming up with the topic name there, or the segment name, is I want you guys to feel like your voices are heard here too. And again, I'm willing to be an electronic baseball pen pal with you if you want to talk some baseball, as long as we're respectful. And again, you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. And I appreciate your emails and comments. And that is why every Tuesday, again, I want to do this, Talk You Off Tuesday. And a favorite electronic baseball pen pal of mine, Bill, he's going to start us off with two separate emails I want to cover. And Bill and I, again, have had some very respectful disagreements electronically. And that's why I kind of want to share at least what he started this, and then another one that he sent me. So this is what he first writes about Grant Taylor. Is it me, or has he been bad? Seems to be a thrower, not a pitcher. And then he emailed me a little bit days later. I don't believe Chase Meidroth is the guy on a winning team for this team. Yes, his ceiling is at best Jake Cronenworth minus the power, and Sosa isn't the answer either when we are ready to win. Deal him off this offseason with some team. Will be out of town stupid and just see his numbers. Okay. So we've written back and forth on Taylor. And right now, I'm just going to say this. Most pitchers with velocity actually do start out as throwers because they can get by on stuff. I remember when I covered the Brewers, Ron Renick was the manager at the time. And we were kind of talking about that in a pregame scrum about because the Brewers were trying to get some young arms after losing, Zach Greinke and Sean Markham running out of gas. They were trading off guys. And he's like, sometimes, you do want to find the guys that have the stuff, because it can sort of at least help them ease into the league, because if they have stuff that they can throw strikes, then you can eventually teach them how to be pitchers. It kind of goes back and forth, but having stuff always helps you get to the big leagues. It's then you eventually have to be turned into a pitcher and harness it. So for Taylor, yeah, I do agree, though, that he's got to start mixing in his secondary pitches a little bit better. But the other thing is that we got to ask is he even still destined to be in the bullpen? While I'm fine if he is in the bullpen, you give him the opportunities. I don't know if, hopefully he does develop. You got to remember, his arm is going to dictate where he will be. So if his arm can, if he can build it up where it can handle a major league load, I think he's going to eventually still be a starter. So we just got to figure that out. But again, yeah, he probably needs to be developed a little bit more. He's got to start, trying to figure out how to throw the secondary pitches in. Maybe if he is going to be a reliever, then it is just one pitch instead of two. Instead of, one secondary pitch instead of two secondary pitches, maybe he's got to look at that. And for Meidroth, yeah, I'm still a fan of him. The pitchers are finding a way to get him to lift that bat off his shoulders, thus driving down his ability to get on base at a high rate. Although I'm starting to wonder if you do want to think he's going to be your second baseman, does it make sense to have him, with that good eye, be like, your long-term 9-hole hitter, where he sort of gives you that potential to still get on base at the bottom of the order once you're ready to go through the second or third time in the order? Maybe, I don't know. And Sosa, well, I want to tie in another mailbag question, and this one's from Ronaldo. What are the future plans with Sosa? This guy rakes, but not enough to DH, and his defense is horrible. Huge fan of the show, by the way. Well, thanks, Ronaldo. I'm actually going to make sure to ask some beat writers when I get them out on the show the offseason about what's the official plan, what are they hearing, that type of stuff. For me, though, to speculate, because part of this is a fan, viewing show type thing. I would say it wouldn't shock me if they do try to trade Sosa, only because you actually do have a lot of infield depth in your system that can fit the full hitter profile the White Sox like. I think Sosa's got a little bit of the hitter profile that the White Sox are now looking for under Ryan Fuller, where, put the ball in the air. And Sosa's very good at putting the ball in the air. The problem is they also want guys who not only can put the ball in the air and hit for power, but get on base over 300. They're looking for those on-base percentage guys, kind of old school money ball. Get the ball in the air or get on base. One of the two. Just do something beyond just willy-nilly swinging like we've seen from 2021 to 2024. My only thing is I'm sure Getz might not trade him because he probably might have this unrealistic price by looking at his numbers, and he doesn't have to trade him because you still have him under club control. But you got to figure out what to do with, say, Lenyn, Sosa, and, say, Andrew Benintendi, because you've got some redundancy there of guys that are probably more ideally DHs, even though they're low floor DHs. But you still want to have some of that DH open, because if you're going to have Teal and Carroll, which I believe they should both be on the roster, you got to have at-bats for them. So you got to have that DH spot open a little bit, and you can have maybe, say, just Sosa, if he sticks around, filling in DH at that point and that type of stuff. Although, again, I keep thinking, don't shut down the idea of playing Kyle Teal on left. I'm just saying. And the other thing is I could see them not trading Sosa because it's not a pressing need to sort out right now. You'd probably want to hopefully get Andrew Benintendi off your roster. That would be more ideal because, again, this team's not going to be contending until likely 2027. So you could see maybe Sosa produces a little bit better at the plate in terms of taking walks to prove that he could be even a higher value hitter. I mean, he keeps showing you, hey, he can get better. I'm not saying that that's fact. I'm just throwing that out there. Or again, you move him at the 2026 trade deadline too and see if he can, get you something better if he does improve that on-base percentage just a little bit. All right, this one is from Howard. He actually sent this to me via Facebook message. Hi, Todd. It looks like Mike Clevinger was never added to the big league roster after all. I did message him back about James Fox's little report there. As of this morning, he's not listed among the current 28. This is why I wanted to share Howard's comments here. Incidentally, with Jose Valentin in town over the weekend, it reminded me that he holds the White Sox career record for home runs for shortstops with 136. The way that Monty has begun his big league career, he could possibly exceed that total if he stays healthy and remains at short. Also, you were recently talking about the Sox adding a free agent bat over the winter. If the Ishbia money is there, I think that Schwarber would be a strong candidate, being that he probably already has a good relationship with Venable from when Will was on the Cub coaching staff from 2018 to 2020. So first of all, the other reason why I wanted to share Howard's message is he's again, electronic pen pal. We just, Facebook Messenger, that type of stuff. I love anybody that ever mentions Jose Valentin because I will always have appreciation for Jose Valentin, at least at the plate. Yes, his defense was not good, but he was very critical in helping, the kids can play, get to the AL Central title in 2000. So yeah, it'd be great if Colson stays at shortstop long term. But again, I just keep saying that I think Billy Carlson is eventually going to force, Montgomery to go to third. It's not that Montgomery can't play third. I mean, he's showing you play a decent defensive third base. It's just at some point, Billy Carlson's elite glove, and if he can make that swing adjustment, I'd rather have Billy Carlson than with that adjustment that everybody says that can maybe get him to Bobby Witt Jr. I'd rather have him at short, and I'd rather have Colson Montgomery at third, and those guys just crushing the ball, to get there. And I wanted to share this too because I totally forgot that, Venable and Schwarber did cross paths. I'm not sure what the relationship is, but again, I would love to see Schwarber on the White Sox next season because, again, they need home runs. And it sounds like a 4-year deal might be what seals the deal. So, yeah, you might want to check in with Justin Ishbia, because if he takes control in 2029, he's going to, in 2029, not 2025, that would be a long time, he's inheriting some of that money. However, I think they're going to use a lot of Justin Ishbia's billions or whatever millions he's giving to basically cover Luis Robert Jr.'s $20 million option, to take the gamble that he hopefully rebuilds his value, and also includes some money to maybe, if they can find someone willing to take Andrew Benintendi off their hands, if they got to send money. Well, again, I just don't know who's the one team that I think would be ideal that I could get on the phone and say, look at the numbers, look at the eye test, that could actually help you, would be the Boston Red Sox at a DH or left field. But here's the thing. The Boston Red Sox don't need a DH or left fielder. They might actually get back on the phone and say, hey, do you guys still interested in Weiler Abreu? Because we need to open up the outfield, for example. And then finally, this is from Brian. Good morning, Todd. Love the show. I think you're doing a great job. Can you please ask the next prospect guru that you have on what exactly is Alexander Albertus' injury, and why are the White Sox so secretive and clandestine about what is going on with him? Thanks and take care, Brian. Again, appreciate you always emailing me too there, Brian. So the only news that you actually have in terms of another Albertus injury is my guy, Adrian White, my teammate at SouthsideShowdown.com, did tweet a bit back that he noticed, hey, Albertus was put back on the 60-day IL. That's it. And I did reach out to Ian Eskridge, and, he thinks that he's a myth. He doesn't exist on X, formerly Twitter, but he has not heard anything. Let me check my other status there. And Jeff Cohen, he's always down there at Kannapolis, because Albertus, if I remember, he was supposed to go from the Complex League after his rehab assignment, where he did all right. He was supposed to go to Kannapolis, and he hasn't heard anything. And I don't get why they're being secretive. Maybe they're being secretive because, again, the front office does just think this guy's a lottery ticket prospect. He's down at low A. Nobody's going to care. But you got to remember, this is the guy who came over in the Miguel Vargas 3-team trade with a broken leg. So, yeah, I would care. You traded for a guy with a broken leg. Did you trade for a damaged good prospect? Did you leverage some of your trade assets like Eric Fetty and Michael Kopech for a guy with a broken leg? Because Jarrell Perez, he's got the chance to be a very good power-hitting player in the league. You would like to hit on all three. I'm just saying. So, well, this wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. But before I go, it's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson and former college star Jesse Holley and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. And I'll be back tomorrow with another weekly Way Back Wednesday segment. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the White Sox finally reaching 50 wins. Another reason Mike Clevinger getting called up would be a major, major negative. And your mailbag questions and comments, you can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.